reason why Plato has given his philosophy and theory of knowledge is, if you look, when Plato was living in the Greek city, he was living in the capital city of Greece, that is called Athens. At that time, Sparta is another city which is very famous, and there used to be some fighting between Athens and Sparta. When they were fighting, Athens has lost a war in Sparta. Athens lost the war with Sparta. And now he was analyzing why they have lost the war. Plato said, we have lost the war because we do not have a good philosopher king. There is no philosopher king, and our state is in not good condition. That is the reason why we lost the war. Further, how he said state is not in good condition. He said, look at, you have lost the war. Not only lost the war, you killed one of the wisest man on the earth by asking him to bring the hemlock, right? And that is Socrates. By looking at these two things, Socrates confined, or Socrates was very confirmed that Athens was degraded because of the so-called concept of state. That is called a bad state. Now what he started doing is, he started propounding these theories. Now when he has seen this, at that time Athens was a democratic state. In a democratic state, Athens has lost the war. As a result, Plato never liked democracy. He was against democracy. As a result, when you look at Socrates' teaching, Plato's teaching, he always taught in favor of monarchy. This is one thing that you have to understand. Plato proposed monarchy. Why monarchy? Because at that time, when he was living, Athens itself was a democratic country. Because of the democratic nature of the country, he said that democracy is rule of the fools. As a result, there has to be one ruler, not many rulers. You should not give choice to many people, but there should be one ruler. And that ruler has to be a philosopher. Which means, more or less, he is supporting monarchy. In his view, democracy is the most rotten form of government, which is subjected to revolution on one day, and slowly revolution might happen and it will get replaced with monarchy. In terms of Plato, it is democracy which leads to mobocracy. Mobocracy, mob is, in the name of democracy, mob is going to rule. And this mob are a set of illiterate people. Because of the illiterate people, the state is going to, as it is ruled by illiterate people, the state is going to lose its relevance. And this is what he said. This is the reason why Athens has lost in Sparta war. And this is the reason what he has proposed, saying that it was, or they have killed the wisest man on the earth because of these fools. That is called mob. As a result, he is very, very against democratic nature. As he is against democratic, few people say he is against open society. Because in democracy, it is open society which is present, but some critics say that he has said that he is not propounding the so-called democracy. As a result, they consider him as enemy to open society. For example, let's consider how Plato has said this. Now, Plato has said this, how it is relevant, how far Plato said is relevant. Now, Plato's philosopher king, or the so-called knowledge on theory or theory on knowledge starts by saying that look at India now as per Association of Democratic Reforms. In the name of democracy, 43% of our MPs have criminal charges. This clearly shows that in democracy, it is the mob who is having criminal charges who are going to frame the laws. If the mob is going to frame the laws, obviously the state is going to collapse. This is his philosophy. This is the exact situation which is present in India today. Not only this, if you look at some other countries of the globe, say for example, Donald Trump, again, Donald Trump is not a wise man. Why? He has got out of the so-called climate change deals like Paris climate deal. As a result, he is considered as not a wise man. So he is an ignorant. When it comes to some leaders of African countries, Pakistan, Latin American countries, so these countries were ruled by fools. As a result, there exists always some political turmoil. Political turmoil. Why this is present? Why exactly these things are present? These things are present because Plato said that his teacher believed in one thing, that is Socrates. Socrates believed that no one wants to be bad, no person wants to be bad, no one wants to be bad, but still they do bad, but still people do bad because they don't understand what is good. They don't understand what is good. Everyone wants to do everyone wants to do good. They do not want to do bad. But they do bad. Why they do bad? Because they cannot understand what is good. Now, as they cannot understand what is good, they are ignorance. They are ignorance. In the name of doing good to America, Donald Trump came out of Paris deal. But he doesn't exactly know what is good. As a result, Donald Trump is considered as ignorant in Plato's terminology. Now, next is, so he said that as long as ignorance rule, the state will be at loss. Not only state will be at loss, the wise men in the state will also be at loss. And that is why he famously said that if wise men is not participating in politics, if wise men is not participating in politics, they have to face the evil of they have to face the evil rule of ignorance. Hence they say that it is the primus duty of wise men to come and participate in politics. This is what he is saying indirectly. I repeat, Socrates or Plato, he started saying about theory of knowledge. I started theory of knowledge. Before that, Plato, why he has propounded this theory of knowledge, he has one thing in his mind. What is that? When Plato was living, there was one war which has happened between Athens and Sparta. In this war, Athens has lost. Plato, being a very great patriot, he had huge love for his motherland. Because when Plato was present, Athens was one of the most glorious city-state, but he couldn't digest this glorious city-state could lose war with the so-called Sparta. As a result, he clearly found out that Athens was in bad shape. As a result, he started thinking or analyzing why exactly uh, Athens has lost the war. He has found out that We have lost the war because we are democratic polity. Now, why democratic polity led to loss of war? Because in the name of democracy, it is the fools who are trying to rule the state. The moment it is ruled by the fools, they doesn't know what is good. As a result, they always make the state to fail. Hence, he started propounding that in the place of democracy, you should have monarchy. What do you mean by monarchy? How Plato is propounding it through the philosophy called the philosopher king. There should be one ruler, not many rulers, and that ruler has to be a philosopher. As a result, he said that democracy is absolutely going to fail, hence, monarchy is the best form of government. In Plato's words, this is the thing. Why? He said some examples like this. We can consider the present day examples. In India, the present day Indian parliamentarians, 43% Indians have criminal charges. As a result, the laws that are coming out of this parliament is very, very poor. Hence, the state is doomed to be failed. When it comes to some global south countries like Africa, Pakistan, Latin America, why these were in turmoil always? Because they are ruled by the fools. Now, what happens when they are ruled by the fools? The thing with the fools is no one wants to be bad. Even the fools don't want to be bad, but still they do bad because they do not understand what is good. In order to understand what is good, you have to be a wise man. It is only a fool or ignorant who can't understand what is good. As a result, when it is ruled by the ignorance, not only state loses, but also wise men gets killed in that state, just like Socrates got killed in the so-called Greek city. Now, that is why he has famously said that if wise men are staying away from politics, they have to face the burnt of evil rule. They have to face the wrath of the evil rule by ignorance. Hence, he called famously that wise men should participate in politics. This is what his theory is actually. Continuing on, right? This is one thing. Hence, he is considered as the so called ignorance. He is considered as an enemy to open society by some critics because he is saying that democracy is the rule of fools. Now, he has also given one more thing called fools have two things. They suffer from double tragedy. Fools always suffer from double tragedy. What is a double tragedy? He has famously analyzed all these things and he said that the double tragedy of fools or ignorant people is we are ruled by ignorance. We are ruled by ignorance. And this ignorance do not know that they are ignorance. Don't know that they are ignorance. This is double tragedy. Not only they rule, but they doesn't know that they are ignorance. So people face, whenever in democracy, as per Plato, people face double tragedy. What is that double tragedy? We are not only ruled by the ignorance, but these ignorance do not know that they are ignorance. Now this is a double tragedy. Why double tragedy? If the ignorance are knowing at least that they are ignorance, there will be scope for improvement. If they know that I am an ignorant, they will try to improve. But they don't improve. The reason is they don't know that they are ignorance. This is the highest tragedy of the fools. And because of these fellows coming to power, people face this double tragedy. Hence, Plato says that it is the ignorance of the ruling class which is spoiling the state. Hence, Plato said that democracy is rule of ignorance, and ignorance, and ignorance is Vice, V-I-C-E, vice. What is vice? Opposite of virtue. Now, if ignorance is vice, what is virtue? Knowledge is virtue. If ignorance is vice, what is virtue? Knowledge is virtue. Hence, he asked us to study about knowledge. He has propounded one thing called the theory of knowledge. I repeat what I said so far. I started telling about theory of knowledge. But why exactly we have to study, or what is Plato's intention for us to study about knowledge? Because when Plato was living, I quickly repeat it, have an overview. When Plato was living, he was living in the Greek capital city called Athens. He was a great patriot. He was from aristocratic family. He has seen the great glorious city-state like culture of Athens, but he couldn't digest when Athens has lost to Sparta. He started seeing for the reasons for the loss of Athens with Sparta, and he found out that it is democracy which has made Athens to lose. Now, why exactly democracy has made Athens to lose? Because under the name of democracy, it is the fools who are going to come to power. Rather, he has propounded that in place of democracy, you should have monarchy. That is a rule by one person, and that person has to be a philosopher, a wise man. Right? So, in the name of democracy, illiterate people come to the power, and because of this illiteracy, people also face some evil one. How they will face evil one? Because this ignorance or this illiterates, they don't try to do bad, but they do bad because they don't know what is good. That is called ignorance. That is the reason why he says ignorant is wise, V-I-C, wise thing. Now, why ignorance is wise thing? Because these ignorance fellows, when they are ruling, they cause double tragedy to people. One is not only they rule the country, but they don't accept that they are ignorance, or they don't know themselves that they are ignorance. Once they don't know that they are ignorance, they cannot become good, or you cannot get the best. Hence, there is no scope of improvement at all. Hence, he said that fools are ruling and these are ignorance and they don't know that they are ignorance. As a result, there is no scope for improvement. Hence, he says that the rule of ignorance is wise. Hence, it has to be the rule of the opposite of ignorance is knowledge. So, what is virtue then? Virtue is the rule of knowledge. That is the reason why he has laid a very strong foundation for knowledge. So, virtue, as per Plato, is knowledge. To know what exactly is the thing. Now, knowledge application is known as wise. And he said that Socrates is the wisest man. Why? He has knowledge. Socrates has knowledge. That is what his opinion is. So, as per Plato, knowledge is a virtue. Knowledge is a virtue. That is the reason why we study about the so-called theory of knowledge of Plato. So, he has propounded, in short, he has propounded one thing that is called the problem is ignorance. The solution is knowledge. The problem is democracy. Solution is monarchy. And this monarch has to be a philosopher, and the solution is a philosopher king. Hence, when there is virtuous rule. When there is virtuous rule, when it is ruled by knowledgeable persons, then you will have one thing called the good state. An entire philosophy of Plato runs across these lines: good state, how to create a good state. All the things of Plato runs with good state. Why? Because this is the answer for why Athens has lost the war, why Socrates was killed. As a result, whatever Plato has studied, that is based on Socrates. He has considered Socrates as a central theme and he has set all his philosophies. Now, this is one thing that I wanted to introduce Plato with. Now, the second thing is Plato has done some commendable works. Majorly, he has written some books. What are the books that was written by Plato? Those who are writing some exams like CUET, this will be helpful. Now, he has written a book called, the first book that he has written is The Republic. The Republic. This was written by Plato when he was very young. At a very young stage, he has written this book. So, younger Plato has written this. The second thing is, he has written a book called Statesman. The third book that he has written is The Laws. Three books of Plato: The Republic, Statesman, The Laws. Plato has written the book called The Laws when he was very mature. So you find matured Plato in his writings of The Laws. Statesman, it was transition phase of Plato. Every human being will have this, right? At a very young age, we don't listen to anyone. When we become matured, right, we behave with reality. In the transition phase, right, we'll take many decisions. So, just like Plato, similarly, Plato has also written three books. One is The Republic, The Statesman, and The Laws. In these three books, he has explained all the concepts that we are studying about Plato. Whatever the concepts that we are studying Plato, all these are explained in his book. All these concepts are explained in this book. Now, The Republic, younger Plato, Statesman, transition phase of Plato, Laws, mature Plato. Now, why is said he is at younger stage? When he was very younger, at youthful stage, he has written this book, and this book was very utopian in its idea. Utopian in its idea. Now, in his transition phase, and in his mature phase, he has become somewhat idealist. He has become somewhat idealist. Now, what is the difference between utopian and being ideal? Utopian is something which is impractical in nature, which cannot be achieved. Impractical, cannot be achieved at all. Whereas idealism is the yardstick to achieve, and it can be achieved. It is practically possible to achieve idealism. By consistently doing the work, you can achieve idealism. But utopian is something like very impractical. What is that impractical? Say, for example, at a very young stage of Plato, he has said that in his book, the Republic book is considered as very utopian because it is in this book he says that the rule has to be by philosopher king. Philosopher king. Now, he tried to teach philosophy to the king and he was unable to fulfill it. So, who will learn? Because already the king is a fool. So, they wanted to teach philosophy to the king. The king rejected. As a result, the concept of philosopher king, though it is very good in books, it couldn't materialize in the practical thing. Hence, it is impractical. If you want to teach something to the leaders, they don't listen, first of all, right? So, you have to listen to the leaders, not to the leaders will listen to you, right? So, this is an utter failure model. Hence, the republic can be considered as utopian model of Plato. However, slowly Plato realizes that this utopianism doesn't work. As a result, you have to go for some mature way of thinking that is called idealism. Slowly, in his transition phase, he has said that rather than ruled by a philosopher state, it has to be ruled by a statesman. What do you mean by a statesman? A man who understands the states properly. Rather than philosopher, he has reduced his yardstick now and said that it has to be ruled by a statesman. For example, Atal Bihari Vajpayee is a statesman, right? So he has moderated his concept. Now this is called idealism. So in the mature stages of Plato, slowly he has turned out from utopian idea to the so-called ideal ideas. So if you look at the institution of philosopher king, the institution of philosopher king, it is present in his book, the so-called Republic. Hence, in Republic, Plato speaks about the philosopher king. And this is utopian. Why it is utopian? Because just like young people, just like any young people, he too has been very radical in this approach. As a result, that radicalism couldn't work. Right? Slowly, slowly, he has turned out to be the so-called idealist, and he has moderated the concept, and he has taken that concept to somewhat ideal state by saying that philosopher king should be in place of philosopher king. He started changing the dimension, and he started saying that it has to be the so-called statesman who has to rule. Now, why I said young people? See, normally when we are young, we are radicals, right? We are romantic, we are utopians, we are extremists. Look at extremism phase of India, right? They are very young people, around 12 years of age, 13 years of age, 21 years of age, right? They are very youth. As a result, they will be very radical, romantic, utopians, extremism. Next, so when we are radicals, what does the term radical denote? In what context Plato is considered as radical? So just like any other human being, Plato is also considered as radical. Now what do it mean by when we say Plato is considered as radical? Now when we are radical, we go for changes. When we are radicals, we go for changes. So, similarly, Plato's radicalism can be seen when he has spoken about the so called philosopher queens. Philosopher queens, not only philosopher kings. In his Republic, he has also spoken about philosopher queens, right? In Plato's Republic, he suggests that women also can become rulers. Women can also become rulers. Now, this is something romantic in his idea. Why it is romantic? Look at Athens or look at the Greek city states. I said Greek city-states at that time, it was highly patriarchal in nature. Women were confined to the four walls of the family and they were not allowed to enter into the public sphere. Hence, Athens at that point of time was very patriarchy, but he is the first person who said that even the women can rule. Even the women can rule. At that point of time, he was considered as very romantic or very radical in his outlook. Why radical? He is directly propounding something which is considered taboo in the society. As a result, as a result, he is considered as utopian by some critics. But if you look from today's lens, you can consider Plato as the first feminist scholar. If you look from present day lens, it appears like Plato is the first feminist scholar. But I said, in order to critically evaluate a person, you have to see, you have to go to that age, you have to go to that space, you have to go to that time, and then you have to analyze a person. Right? This is what I said when I started Western political thought. So just go back to the ages of uh, Greek city states and consider how Plato used to have said this. Plato, in his Republic, he not only spoke about philosopher king, but he also said that philosopher queens. Right? In his Republic, he said that women can also become rulers. As a result, this is something which is against the social structure of Greek city-states, which is highly running on patriarchy. As a result, he was considered as radical or romantic. As a result, it appeared that Plato was almost a radical in his youth. But when you look from the present day context, you can say that Plato is the first female thinker or first feminist scholar. So more or less, he is saying that everyone can become the kings, everyone can be eligible for rule, either that is a king or a queen. But the only thing is they should have knowledge. If you are having knowledge, if you are not ignorance, whether you are a man or a woman, you are eligible to rule. This is what Plato has propounded. So it is quite radical thought in Greek city states, which is highly patriarchal. And then, as he has given equal opportunity for women to join public sphere, he didn't wanted to confine them to four walls of the family. He can be called as the first feminist scholar. More or less, Plato is suggesting wholesale changes in the social order. What is the wholesale changes in the order? He was asking for social engineering. What is the social engineering? Society was patriarchal in nature. Now he is radically asking the society to change. To what? Allow women to enter into politics. That is what he is saying. Right? So he suggested change in all aspects of life, from personal to political, from all the aspects from social to political. Hence, it is said that Plato is going for wholesale social engineering. Wholesale social engineering. It is said that Plato is going for wholesale social engineering. What do you mean by wholesale social engineering? He wants to create a new society. He wants to create a new society free from the clutches of the social evils or uh, social barriers. Look at Indian independence movement. What social reformers did? They fought against the social evils which are fighting against that point of time. Similarly, Socrates or Plato is doing the same thing. What Plato is doing, he is doing exactly the same thing that he wanted to do, that is to bring out a new form of reforms. Now, who will go for reforms? Radical reforms. Only youth. That is what I say. Youth looks for radical reforms. They challenge everything and they want to change everything. As a result, he was considered as the most, what do you call it, the most radical in his youth. Hence, Plato's concept of the republic, younger Plato's concept of the republic can be seen as utopian in its model by then Greek city states. People considered that he was very utopian in his ideas and his ideas won't work. But here itself, you will understand something called why he is called as first feminist scholar. Continuing. Now, social engineering can be done of two types. Let me speak about this for a while. What is social engineering? Drastically altering the so-called social phenomena which is present. Creating a new society, changes in the society is called social engineering. It can be done by two ways. One is piece by piecemeal approach. Piece by piece, you go for social engineering, or go for wholesale, all together at once. Now, who has exactly given this concept of social engineering? There is one thinker called Karl Popper. There is one thinker called Karl Popper, and he has given social engineering. In piecemeal approach, you'll go for social engineering in a gradual manner. Gradually, you'll be changing this, not at once. Not at once. Whereas, when it comes to wholesale approach, all the institutions at once. They reform all the institutions at once, not gradually. Now, Karl Popper considers that so Plato went for wholesale social engineering. He wants the total change. Hence, we call Plato as totalitarian thinker. Totalitarian thinker. Now, that is the reason why Karl Popper said Plato is a totalitarian thinker. I also used this. Some critics said Plato as a totalitarian thinker, or Karl Popper himself said Plato is the father of totalitarianism. He is the father of totalitarianism. Why? Because he has propounded wholesale engineering, not in small scale, but he has propounded wholesale engineering. So, what do I mean to say as a summary? Right? Plato idea is about philosopher king. Why Plato gave the idea of philosopher king? I have said why he has given the idea of philosopher king, because if it is not a philosopher, you have to be ruled by the ignorance, and the double tragedy of ignorance is not only they will be ruling, but they will not be knowing that they are ignorance. Once they are not knowing that they are ignorance, they consider that whatever they do is good. As a result, people will be at loss. That is the first thing. So Plato's philosopher king. Why Plato gave this idea of philosopher king? Now, in order to overcome this dilemma, you should have knowledge, and that is the reason why Plato considers knowledge as virtue, and that is the reason why he has given theory of knowledge. And he has also said that, or if you look at the way in which Plato has written his books, he has written three books that is called The Republic, which is at a very young stage, but people do consider this Plato as very utopian in its outlook, which is very impractical because he has propounded some youthful ideas like radical ideas where he wanted to go for wholesale engineering, or he has propounded something like philosopher queen. So it was considered something which is drastic to the patriarchal society, the then patriarchal society of Athens. As a result, he was considered as not a practical person but impractical